The first sign that Noah Bennett had ruined his life was not the black wedding ring on his finger, or the velvet canopy bed above him, or even the maid whispering, "Good morning, my lord," like she expected him to bite her head off. It was the floating blue message blinking inches from his face that said, "Congratulations, you have been assigned the role of vicious stepmother." Noah stared at it for a full 10 seconds, because that was what reasonable people did when reality broke in half. Then he pulled the blanket over his head and said, "Nope, absolutely not. I do not accept this customer service experience." 12 hours ago, he had been in his tiny Chicago apartment, wearing sweatpants with a hole in the knee, eating instant mac and cheese from the pot, because dishes were a social construct. His job as a web novel editor had swallowed his soul one typo at a time, and the last manuscript on his screen had been a fantasy romance called The Blackwood Duke and His Doomed Bride. It had everything: curses, noble houses, mysterious children, dramatic staircases, and one ridiculously stupid character named Lord Noah Blackwood, the new spouse of the coldest duke in the empire, who was famous for being a cruel stepmother and even more famous for not surviving past chapter 12. Real Noah had read the entire thing while stress-chewing a plastic spoon. "How do you fail at being evil this badly?" he had muttered at his laptop. "If I were a villainous stepmother, I would at least be organized." That was when the screen flashed white. Not normal white, either. Divine printer jam white. The kind of white that made Noah think maybe he should have updated his surge protector, gone outside more, and stopped insulting fictional people with suspiciously similar names. Then came the darkness, soft as sleep and twice as annoying. Now he was here, in a room the size of his entire apartment building, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than his student loans, with pale morning lights spilling across black marble floors and heavy curtains embroidered with silver thorns. His reflection in the mirror was still him, mostly. White skin, soft green eyes, honey brown hair sticking up in 14 directions, and the face of a man who had never once successfully intimidated a Roomba. The door creaked open. A maid in a gray uniform stepped inside, saw him awake, and instantly looked like she regretted every career decision that had led her within 20 feet of him. "Breakfast is ready, my lord. The young master and young lady are waiting." Young master, young lady. Noah's stomach dropped. Elliot and Lily Blackwood, the doomed children of the villain family. In the novel, they were described as strange, dangerous, impossible to love. In the illustration, they had looked small enough to get lost inside their own coats. The blue message flickered again. First task: establish your authority as a cruel stepmother. Make the children fear you by breakfast. Failure will accelerate your scheduled ending. Noah sat very still. Then he smiled, badly. "Great," he whispered. "I'm trapped in a death flag mansion, married to a terrifying duke, and my first assignment is emotional damage before pancakes." He threw off the blanket, stood on shaking legs, and marched toward the door with all the confidence of a man who had no plan, no weapons, and absolutely no maternal instincts. He was going to be vicious. He was going to be cold. He was going to make everyone hate him just enough to stay alive. Then he reached the dining room and saw two pale children sitting silently at a table long enough to host Thanksgiving for a football team, both staring down at untouched plates like they were waiting for the world to prove it hated them first. Noah's fake smile cracked. The system chimed cheerfully in his ear. "Begin cruelty now." Noah looked at the children, then at the perfect little pastries placed in front of them, then at the way Lily's tiny hand trembled beside her fork. Something inside him sighed, packed its bags, and abandoned the villain plan completely. "Okay," Noah muttered under his breath. "So this is going to be a problem." Noah had imagined that being cruel would feel dramatic, maybe even slightly elegant, like sweeping into a room with a cape and saying something icy enough to make candles flicker. Instead, he stood at the head of a breakfast table, sweating through expensive silk, while two children watched him with the cautious stillness of rabbits deciding whether a garden statue was secretly a wolf. Elliot Blackwood sat perfectly straight, his dark school jacket buttoned to the throat, silver gray eyes narrowed with a suspicion far too old for a 10-year-old. Beside him, Lily looked even smaller, her white blonde hair tied with a black ribbon, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the little strawberry pastry in front of her as if it might insult her first. The dining room was freezing. Not emotionally freezing, although yes, that too. actually freezing. Noah could see his own breath. A chandelier glittered overhead like 1,000 tiny judgmental icicles, and every servant along the wall kept their eyes lowered, waiting for him to do something terrible. The floating message pulsed near his shoulder. Make them fear you. Noah inhaled slowly. Fine. He could do this. He could be mean. He had once sent a 3-page editorial note about comma abuse. He had range. He lifted his chin, pointed at the pastries, and announced, children should not eat dessert for breakfast. There. Cruel. Authoritarian. Extremely stepmother-coded. Elliot's mouth tightened. Lily's shoulders sank by half an inch, and Noah immediately felt like the worst person in 2 universes. To recover, he reached for Lily's plate, intending to slide it away with cold villain flair. But the second the pastry passed under his nose, something sharp and bitter cut through the sugar. Not spoiled. Not normal. The kind of smell that made every exhausted editor instinct in his body scream. This plot point has consequences. Noah froze. The system flashed red. Continue cruelty. Noah looked at Lily's pale fingers, then at Elliot's untouched water glass, then at the servants pretending very hard not to breathe. His brain offered several options, all of them stupid. He chose the loudest one. Actually, Noah said, voice rising, this entire breakfast is offensive. Then he swept his arm across the table. Plates slid. Pastries toppled. A silver pitcher tipped onto the floor with a splash loud enough to make 3 servants gasp and 1 portrait on the wall blink. Lily stared at the ruined food. Elliot stood so quickly his chair scraped back. What are you doing? He demanded. Noah placed one hand on his hip, because apparently panic had turned him into a community theater villain. Protecting my standards. These pastries are ugly. The tea smells like regret, and whoever plated this fruit has clearly never respected a grape. Silence. Absolute silence. Then the double doors opened. The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Adrian Blackwood entered without hurry, wearing a long black coat over a dark suit, his silver eyes moving from the spilled breakfast to the trembling staff to Noah, who suddenly understood why the novel had spent 7 paragraphs describing this man as dangerous. Adrian was tall, calm, and beautiful in the unsettling way of a winter storm behind glass. Explain, he said. Just one word. Terrible word. Noah swallowed. The system chimed. Excellent opportunity. Blame the children. Noah looked at Elliot, who was trying to stand in front of Lily despite being nearly as frightened as she was. Something in Noah's chest twisted hard. He turned back to Adrian and forced his most unpleasant smile. I refuse to let valuable heirs eat suspicious food in my house. If they are going to be miserable, they can do it with better nutrition. Adrian's gaze sharpened. He stepped to the table, lifted one fallen pastry with a napkin, and held it near his face without eating. A faint shadow crossed his expression. The servants went even paler. Noah tried not to look relieved and failed spectacularly. Elliot stared at him. Lily stared at him. Adrian stared at him longest of all. You noticed, the Duke said quietly. Noah waved a hand like this was obvious and not the closest he had ever come to fainting before 9 in the morning. I have a very refined sense of spite. For the first time, Lily made a sound. Not a laugh exactly. More like a tiny breath that had escaped without permission. Elliot glanced at her, stunned. Adrian set the pastry down. Clear the room, he ordered. The servants hurried out, leaving Noah alone with the family he was supposed to terrify. The system flickered uncertainly. Cruelty score pending. Family attention increased. Noah closed his eyes. Great. Wonderful. He had failed his first evil task by accidentally saving breakfast, possibly exposed a household conspiracy, and made the terrifying Duke look at him like he had just become a puzzle worth solving. Then Lily slid her untouched napkin toward him with both hands and whispered, Thank you. Noah opened his eyes. The villain plan did not just crack. It fell down the stairs. By lunch, Noah discovered that the Blackwood mansion had 213 rooms, 6 staircases that refused to lead to the same place twice, and exactly 0 people willing to explain why a family needed that many portraits of grim ancestors judging everyone from the walls. He also discovered that the system was petty. New task. It chimed while he stood in the upstairs hallway, pretending not to be lost. Discipline the young master. Cruel stepmothers must crush rebellion early. Noah looked through the half-open library door and saw Elliot sitting alone at a massive desk, surrounded by history books taller than his head. The boy was not rebelling. He was asleep with his cheek pressed against a map of the northern provinces, one hand still gripping a pencil. Beside him, a tutor stood stiffly with a wooden pointer and the expression of a man who considered joy a personal enemy. He failed his geography recitation, the tutor said when Noah entered. The appropriate punishment is isolation and copied lines until midnight. Elliot woke instantly, face blanking into that careful little mask Noah already hated. Noah glanced at the system. Be severe. He could be severe. He absolutely could. Midnight, Noah repeated, letting his voice go cold. The tutor nodded. A necessary lesson. Noah walked to the desk, picked up Elliot's messy worksheet, and frowned at it like a villain inspecting tax fraud. This is unacceptable. Elliot lowered his eyes. The tutor looked satisfied. Noah slapped the paper back onto the desk. No child in this house is going to embarrass me by memorizing maps like a sad little parrot. If he is going to survive noble politics, he needs strategy, trade routes, alliances, and the ability to tell when an adult is wasting his time. The tutor's mouth opened. Noah pointed at the door. You may go reconsider your personality. The man left so quickly his shoes squeaked. Elliot stared at Noah as if Noah had just pulled the moon out of his pocket and complained it was dusty. Are you punishing me? He asked carefully. Obviously, Noah said, sitting across from him. Your punishment is learning useful things from someone who has edited 12 fantasy war arcs and understands that no kingdom ever falls because a child forgot the shape of a river. For the next hour, Noah turned the map into a game. He used sugar cubes as cities, spoons as roads, and a very dramatic butter knife as a mountain range. Elliot tried not to enjoy it. He failed within 8 minutes. When he finally guessed the safest winter trade route, his gray eyes lit up before he remembered to hide it. Noah pretended not to notice, because dignity was a fragile ecosystem. The system buzzed angrily. Cruelty score decreasing. Emotional dependence increasing. Noah whispered, snitch. After that came Lily. The system sent him to the glass conservatory with a new order. Punish the young lady for improper magic use. Noah found Lily standing beneath a dead orange tree, black mist curling around her small fingers like frightened smoke. The gardener hovered nearby, pale and nervous. Her magic frightened the staff, he said. Lily tucked her hands behind her back. One tiny patch of skin near her wrist looked red from the cold air, not injured, just irritated, as if the magic itself was too sharp for her. Noah's stomach did that annoying soft thing again. He crossed his arms. Unacceptable. Lily flinched. Noah turned to the gardener. No Blackwood child of mine is going to wander around with bare hands like a tragic ghost in a bargain bin fairy tale. Bring gloves. Soft ones. Black. With silver stitching. And if anyone says she looks frightening, they can practice being silent in another wing of the house. Lily blinked up at him. You are not sending me away? I am sending your terrible glove situation away. 10 minutes later, Lily wore the new gloves and stared at them like they were treasure. Her shadow, which had been quivering near her shoes, curled peacefully around her ankles. Then she stepped closer and held the edge of Noah's sleeve between two fingers. Not his hand. Not yet. Just the sleeve. Noah froze so hard, he almost became furniture. From the doorway, a low voice said, You have a strange method of cruelty. Adrian stood there, unreadable as ever, silver eyes fixed on the place where Lily held Noah's sleeve. Noah lifted his chin. I am building fear through accessories. Adrian's mouth moved almost like a smile. Almost. The system made a sound that felt deeply judgmental. Family attachment increased. Noah looked at Elliot watching from the hallway, Lily at his sleeve, and Adrian studying him like a secret he wanted to keep. Wonderful. At this rate, Noah was not becoming the wicked stepmother. He was becoming the mansion's emotionally unstable after-school program. That night, Noah learned 3 important things about Blackwood Mansion. First, the hallways got longer after sunset. Second, the candles lit themselves when they felt judged. Third, Adrian Blackwood apparently considered midnight an appropriate time for emotional interrogation. Noah had been halfway through sneaking back to his room with a stolen plate of cookies under one arm, because villainy was exhausting and dinner portions in Gothic mansions were deeply unserious, when a servant appeared from the shadows and bowed. His Grace requests your presence in the study. Noah looked down at the cookies. The cookies looked back, offering no legal advice. Of course he does, Noah whispered. Why would the terrifying Duke wait until business hours? The study sat at the end of the west wing behind double doors carved with black roses. Inside, the fireplace burned with blue flames. Books climbed 20 feet up the walls, and Adrian stood beside his desk like he had been painted there by someone with a troubling devotion to cheekbones and emotional distance. He had removed his coat, leaving only a dark vest over a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. It was not fair. Villains should not have forearms. It distracted from their villainy. Sit, Adrian said. Noah sat in the nearest chair with the stiff posture of a man attending his own disciplinary hearing. The system flickered faintly beside the bookshelf. Maintain dominance. Intimidate the Duke. Noah glanced at Adrian, then at the towering shelves, then at the cookies in his lap. Yes, certainly. He would intimidate this man with baked goods and anxiety. Adrian crossed the room slowly. You dismissed Elliot's tutor. He was terrible. You replaced Lily's handlers. They were also terrible. You ordered the kitchen staff to taste every dish before serving the children. Noah lifted his chin. Basic manners. Adrian stopped in front of him. And this afternoon, you personally checked the tea before Lily drank it. Noah's fingers tightened around the plate. He had hoped no one noticed that. The tea had smelled wrong. Not dangerous in an obvious way, just strange enough to make his skin prickle. He had taken a sip, made a dramatic face, and declared it tasted like wet curtains. Everyone had thought he was being difficult. That had been the point. Adrian's gaze dropped to Noah's right hand. A faint redness marked two of his knuckles where the tea had splashed. Before Noah could hide it, Adrian reached out. Not fast, not forceful, just quiet. His fingers closed gently around Noah's wrist, warm against skin that had been cold all day. Noah's brain immediately dropped every useful thought it had ever owned. What are you doing? He asked, too softly to sound offended. Asking the question you keep avoiding. Adrian turned Noah's hand palm up and brushed his thumb near the irritated spot, careful not to touch it directly. The contact was small, barely anything. Somehow it filled the room. Who taught you to protect people while pretending to insult them? Noah laughed once, nervous and thin. That is not what I am doing. No. Adrian's silver eyes lifted to his. Then why did you put yourself between Lily and the staff this morning? Because they were hovering. Why teach Elliot instead of punishing him? Because bad geography is a public crisis. Why taste the tea? Noah opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The fireplace snapped softly. Outside the tall windows, snow drifted. Through the dark garden, like torn paper. Adrian still held his wrist, steady and patient, as if he had all the time in the world to wait for Noah to stop lying. Noah hated that patience. He hated it because it was gentle. He hated it because no one in his old life had ever looked at him long enough to notice when his jokes were armor. So he did the only sensible thing. He panicked. Maybe I just hate waste, Noah said, pulling his hand back and standing too quickly. Children are expensive. Heirs are expensive. This house is already dramatic enough without tiny funerals and sad violin music. The words landed badly. Not because they were cruel. Because they shook at the edges. Adrian noticed. Of course he noticed. His expression softened by 1 dangerous inch. You are afraid. Noah scoffed. I am married to a man who owns haunted architecture. Obviously, I am thriving. Not of me. Adrian stepped closer, and Noah stepped back until the desk pressed against his hip. You are afraid of being seen. The system flashed urgently. Warning. Character deviation detected. Noah's pulse jumped. He forced a bright, brittle smile. Your Grace, if this is your idea of small talk, I would hate to see family game night. Adrian looked at the floating blue light near the shelves. Noah went still. The Duke's eyes narrowed, not at Noah, but past him. Who? Adrian asked quietly. Are you performing for? The system vanished. Noah forgot how to breathe. Adrian could see it. Maybe not clearly. Maybe not fully. But enough. Too much. And as the study fell silent around them, Noah realized that becoming hated by the Blackwood family was no longer his biggest problem. Adrian Blackwood had started looking for the truth, and Noah had the terrible feeling he would find it. Noah did not sleep after the study. He tried. He really did. He lay in the enormous bed with the black velvet canopy overhead, stared at the carved roses in the ceiling, and told himself that everything was fine, which was impressive because nothing had been fine since the laptop incident. Adrian had seen the system. Maybe not the words. Maybe not the floating menu of doom. But he had seen something, and a man like Adrian Blackwood did not ignore impossible things. By 2 in the morning, Noah had accepted that sleep was a fantasy for people who were not currently married to suspicious dukes in cursed mansions. So he did what every reasonable man would do during a magical identity crisis. He stole a candle, put on a robe, and went looking for forbidden information. The West Wing was silent except for the soft creak of old wood and the occasional whisper from portraits pretending they had not just moved. Noah kept one hand on the wall, partly to stay oriented and partly because the hallway seemed personally interested in relocating him. "I am not scared," he whispered. A suit of armor turned its helmet toward him. Noah pointed at it. "I am emotionally busy. Do not start." The hidden library was behind a tapestry of the first Duke Blackwood, a man with the warm expression of a tax audit. Noah only found the door because Lily's little shadow doll, a lopsided creature with button eyes and far too much confidence, waddled ahead of him and tapped the wall 3 times. The stones opened without a sound. "You are either helping me or leading me into a family curse," Noah said. The doll gave him 2 thumbs up, despite having no thumbs 5 seconds earlier. The library beyond was not dusty. That made it worse. Dust meant forgotten. This room was clean, warm, and watched over. Shelves curved in a perfect circle, filled with black-bound journals, sealed letters, and history books that definitely were not approved by the Royal Education Board. At the center sat a glass case holding one open book. Noah leaned over it and read the first line. "The public record is a lie." His mouth went dry. Page after page unraveled everything the novel had sold as truth. The Blackwoods had not betrayed the kingdom. They had protected the borderlands for generations, using shadow magic to hold back the old curse beneath the northern mountains. Adrian had not become feared because he wanted power. He had accepted blame because the royal family needed someone terrifying enough to carry every ugly rumor without breaking. Elliot was not a future tyrant. He was a child trained too early because people kept waiting for him to become a monster. Lily was not cursed because she was dangerous. She was dangerous only when frightened, and everyone had spent years making sure she stayed that way. Then Noah found the entry about the previous spouse. Not Adrian's great love. Not the tragic bride from the novel. A political arrangement. A royal spy sent to open the mansion from within. The role of stepmother was never meant to raise the children. It was designed to ruin them. Noah stepped back, the candle trembling in his hand. The system appeared, blue light cold against the shelves. Restricted knowledge accessed. Corrective plot pressure will increase. Corrective plot pressure? Noah whispered. That sounds like a lawsuit wearing a wizard hat. The message changed. Your purpose is to complete the family's downfall. Noah stared at the words until they blurred. He thought about Elliot pretending not to smile over sugar cube trade routes. Lily holding his sleeve like it was the safest thing in the world. Adrian touching his wrist with the kind of care that made Noah want to laugh and run and stay forever, all at once. The book on the stand flipped by itself to a final page. On it was a drawing of the Blackwood family tree. Adrian, Elliot, Lily, and beside them, a new branch written in fresh black ink. Noah Bennett Blackwood. Under his name, one sentence appeared. The final betrayal must come from the one they choose to trust. Noah stopped breathing. The library door opened behind him. Adrian stood in the threshold, silver eyes reflecting the candlelight, his expression unreadable but not angry. Never angry. That was starting to hurt most of all. Now you know, he said quietly. Noah gripped the candle like it could keep his hands from shaking. The book says I am supposed to destroy you. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. Then he stepped into the room and answered, Books have been wrong about us before. For 3 days after the hidden library, Noah tried to do the bravest, dumbest thing he had ever attempted. He tried to become exactly what the story wanted. Not because he believed the system anymore. Not because he wanted to hurt the Blackwoods. Because the book had made one thing painfully clear. The final betrayal had to come from the person they trusted, and Noah was starting to become that person. So he built distance the way a desperate man builds a fence in a hurricane, badly, loudly, and with splinters everywhere. At breakfast, when Elliot slid a revised trade route map across the table with careful pride, Noah did not praise him. He barely looked at it. Adequate, he said, like the word did not taste awful in his mouth. Elliot's small smile vanished, so quickly Noah wished he could grab it out of the air and put it back. The system chimed with approval. Cruelty score increased. Noah stared at his tea and imagined throwing the cup at the nearest wall. At noon, Lily waited near the conservatory with her black gloves on and her little shadow doll tucked under one arm. She held up a torn ribbon without speaking, asking him to tie it the way he had yesterday. Noah forced his hands behind his back. Ask a maid. Lily blinked once, twice. Then she nodded, very politely, because the children in this house had learned politeness the way other children learned fire drills. Noah made it 6 steps around the corner before pressing both palms over his face. I am going straight to emotional jail, he whispered. No trial. No parole. By evening, even the mansion seemed offended by him. Doors shut before he reached them. Candles refused to light. One portrait of an ancient duchess sighed every time he walked by, which felt unnecessary and also a little personal. Adrian said nothing at first. That was worse. Noah could feel the Duke watching from across rooms, from the far end of hallways, from the quiet places where words should have been. He did not accuse. He did not command. He simply noticed. Noah hated being noticed almost as much as he needed it. On the 4th night, rain poured over the mansion roof in silver sheets, turning the windows into dark mirrors. Noah sat alone in his room, staring at the black wedding ring on his finger. The system hovered near the bed. Emotional bonds weakening. Continue isolation to restore original plot. You are a horrible little nightlight, Noah muttered. A soft sound came from the door. Not a knock. A slide of paper against wood. Noah waited until the footsteps disappeared before opening it. A folded note lay on the floor. Elliot's handwriting was stiff and careful. If I did something wrong, please tell me the rules so I can fix it. Noah read it once. Then again. The words blurred. Before he could recover, something small and dark squeezed under the door. Lily's shadow doll waddled toward the bed carrying a tiny stitched pouch. Inside was a cookie wrapped in cloth and a note with only 3 words, in case hungry. Noah sat down hard. No, he whispered, because his chest hurt in a way no system warning could explain. No, no, no. You are supposed to hate me. That is the survival plan. Please respect the survival plan. A knock finally came. Slow. Familiar. Noah did not answer. Adrian's voice came through the door, low and calm. I know you are awake. Noah closed his eyes. That sounds like an invasion of privacy. Your candle is arguing with the curtains. Noah looked over. The candle flame immediately leaned away like it had been caught gossiping. Adrian continued. Elliot thinks he disappointed you. Lily thinks you are leaving. The staff thinks you have been cursed. The portraits think you are being an idiot. Despite himself, Noah laughed once, broken at the edges. The portraits are very opinionated. They are also correct. Silence settled between the door and the room. Then Adrian spoke more softly. If you are trying to make us let go of you, Noah, you are doing it poorly. Noah gripped the ring. You should let go. No one word. No anger. No hesitation. Just certainty. Noah's throat tightened. You do not know what I might be forced to do. Then we will find out together. The system flashed red. Plot resistance detected. Noah looked at the warning, then at the cookie in his hand, then at Elliot's note on the floor. Outside, thunder rolled gently over the estate. For the first time since waking in this world, Noah realized the most terrifying part was not dying in Chapter 12. It was wanting so badly to stay that leaving felt like the cruelest thing he could ever do. Chapter 12 arrived wearing gold chandeliers, polished marble, and the kind of royal ballroom that made Noah want to apologize to every museum he had ever walked through too quickly. The palace stood 3 miles from Blackwood territory, bright and perfect on the outside, which Noah now understood was usually how the worst places dressed for company. Every noble in the kingdom seemed to be there, glittering in silk and jewels, whispering behind white-gloved hands as the Blackwood family entered. Elliot walked on Adrian's left, small shoulders straight beneath a formal black jacket. Lily stayed close to Noah, her gloved fingers hooked lightly around his sleeve, while her shadow doll hid in the folds of her skirt like an anxious napkin. Adrian walked beside Noah without touching him, but the space between them felt louder than contact. You do not have to do this, Adrian said softly, barely moving his mouth. Noah smiled at a passing countess who looked at him like he was a decorative plague. I have been told I am the spouse of a duke. Apparently, that comes with smiling at people who look like they drink lemon juice for fun. Adrian's eyes flicked toward him, and for 1 second, warmth softened the silver. Then the system appeared above the ballroom floor. Final plot correction initiated. Noah's smile froze. The music stretched thin. The chandeliers blurred. His fingers went cold inside his gloves. "No," he whispered. Adrian turned instantly. "Noah." The system's light sharpened. "Proceed to royal witness table. Sign the prepared accusation. Restore the original ending." Noah tried to step back. His body moved forward. Panic opened inside him, quiet and enormous. He could still see everything, hear everything, feel Lily's fingers slip from his sleeve as he walked away. But his legs would not listen. His mouth would not explain. Every step toward the long crystal table at the center of the ballroom felt like walking through deep water while everyone watched from the shore. A royal minister smiled as if he had been expecting this. On the table lay a document sealed in red wax, already written, already waiting. Accusations against Adrian Blackwood. Treason. Forbidden magic. Endangerment of the royal line. Lies dressed in expensive ink. The system pulsed. Sign. Noah fought so hard his hand trembled above the pen. Sweat gathered at the back of his neck. His vision burned. "Please," he whispered, though he did not know who he was begging. The pen touched paper. His name formed one letter at a time, neat and elegant in handwriting that was not his. The ballroom fell silent before the final stroke dried. Then the whispers rose all at once, a soft, poisonous wave. The minister lifted the document with theatrical sorrow. The Duke of Blackwood stands accused by his own spouse. Elliot went white. Lily made a tiny sound that broke Noah more completely than the system ever could. Noah's body released him. He stumbled back from the table, breath catching, his hand still curved around a pen he wanted to drop into the nearest ocean. "I did not," he said, but the words came out too small. "I did not do that." The nobles stared, some satisfied, some amused, none surprised. This was the story they had come to see. The wicked family betrayed from within. The doomed duke finally cornered. The cruel stepmother revealed. Adrian stood across the room, every eye turning toward him, and Noah braced for anger. He deserved anger. He could survive anger. Maybe. Adrian crossed the ballroom slowly, not toward the minister, not toward the document, but toward Noah. His face was calm in the way deep winter was calm, covering everything dangerous beneath stillness. Noah shook his head. "I tried to stop it." Adrian reached him. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Noah could not look up. "I am sorry," he whispered. Adrian did not ask why. He did not accuse. He gently took Noah's trembling hand and removed the pen from his fingers. His thumb brushed over the ink, staining Noah's skin, careful and steady, just like in the study. Then Adrian lowered his voice so only Noah could hear. "Are you hurt?" Noah looked up. That was when the system flickered, uncertain for the first time. Because Adrian Blackwood had just ruined the scene. He had been handed betrayal in front of the entire kingdom, and the only thing he cared about was whether Noah had survived it. The ballroom did not erupt. It inhaled, and that silence felt crueler than any scream. Every noble face turned toward Adrian and Noah, waiting for the tragedy they had dressed in silk and candlelight. The royal minister raised the signed accusation with polished sorrow, claiming the testimony was clear, but Adrian did not release Noah's ink-stained hand. He only asked, "Clear to whom?" Before the minister could recover, Elliot stepped forward, small but unshaken, and unfolded papers tied with black ribbon. He exposed the false trade payments, the altered northern grain routes, and the hidden fact that Blackwood had paid twice while the palace erased both payments from the ledger. Laughter died. Noah realized Elliot had used the sugar cube map from his punishment, and pride nearly broke him. Then Lily raised her gloved hands, and her shadow doll marched onto the marble like a furious little soldier. Midnight shimmer spread across the floor, revealing royal gold seals beneath the tiles. The palace had bound the ballroom itself to listen before the Blackwoods arrived. The system flickered above the witness table, warning that the plot was breaking. Just as the old Blackwood butler entered with palace clerks and sealed archives, explaining that Noah's household standard was now to distrust anything pretty, polished, or served before breakfast. Adrian finally stepped before the court, his voice calm enough to cut deeper than rage. "For years," he said, "the kingdom called his children monsters because it feared the truth. and tonight it had tried to use his spouse as a tool. In front of them all, he removed Noah's black ring, whispered a spell over it, and returned it warm to his finger. This house does not keep people through fear. It chooses, and I choose you. Elliot stood at Noah's left. Lily held his sleeve on the right, and the system cracked into blue sparks, declaring the original ending rejected. Noah laughed shakily and admitted he was terrible at being unwanted. After the ballroom emptied in panic and apologies, the Blackwoods left through the front doors together as snow fell outside the palace. Then a blue doorway appeared in the garden, offering Noah a return to Chicago, to his old apartment and his old life. Elliot froze, Lily let go, and Adrian only said the choice was Noah's. That restraint hurt more than pleading. Noah stepped to the doorway, touched the humming light, judged its texture horrible, and turned back. Lily crashed into him. Elliot joined while pretending not to, and Adrian watched with bright silver eyes as Noah chose them without being trapped. Weeks later, Blackwood Mansion was still haunted, dramatic, and cold in the East Wing, but it had become home. Elliot debated trade policy over pancakes, Lily taught her shadow doll manners, and Noah treated every suspicious pastry as guilty until delicious. The kingdom still whispered, but now it wondered who Noah Bennett Blackwood had become to make its most feared family look at him like home.